She whispered, "I don't know if this is right." I replied, "Sometimes the wrong things feel right." I noticed her before she said a single word. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, like time had pressed on her shoulders but never broken them. Or maybe it was just the silence between us, the kind of silence that makes you too aware of your own breathing. She was older than me. Everyone could see that. Lines at the corner of her eyes, the kind that only come from living long enough to laugh and lose. But those same lines deepened when she smiled, and I found myself waiting for that smile, like it was a secret meant for me. I was 20-something, restless, half-built. She was mid-40s, composed, careful, and yet, something in her eyes flickered every time I spoke, as if I was saying something she hadn't allowed herself to hear in years. We sat close enough that our knees brushed when either of us shifted. She pretended not to notice, adjusting her sleeve, touching the edge of her glass with a fingertip. I noticed everything. The way her hand lingered near mine, but never quite touched it. The way her voice softened when she said my name, like it was heavier than she meant it to be. "Tell me something," I said quietly. Her eyes lifted, cautious but curious. "What kind of something?" "Anything you don't usually tell people." She laughed, short and nervous, pushing her hair behind her ear. "That's dangerous." "Maybe," I said, leaning in just slightly. "But I want to hear it anyway." She looked at me then, really looked, and it was as though the air itself pressed closer around us. My throat went dry. I was suddenly aware of how close her wrist was to mine, how her perfume was soft but impossible to ignore, like the faintest warmth of sandalwood and citrus. Her lips parted, as if to speak, then closed again. She looked down, shaking her head. "You don't know what you're asking." "Maybe not," I admitted. "But I know when something feels real." That was when her hand brushed mine just barely. Maybe it was accidental. Maybe it wasn't. But I felt it like fire through my veins. She didn't pull away, not immediately. She left her fingers there for a breath too long, then folded them into her lap, as though she'd broken some unspoken rule. I wanted to reach for her hand. God, I wanted to. But I stayed still, because some things felt fragile enough to shatter with the wrong move. Instead, I said her name. Just her name. And she exhaled like she hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath all along. "You're too young," she whispered, almost to herself. I smiled, though my chest tightened at her words. "And you're too careful." She turned toward me slowly, her gaze sharp and unflinching, but her voice trembled when she spoke. "I don't know if this is right." The words hung between us, fragile and electric. I leaned closer, enough that I could see the faint shimmer of light on her lips, enough to hear the uneven rhythm of her breathing. "Sometimes," I said softly, "the wrong things feel right." Her eyes closed for half a second, her shoulders rising in a quiet surrender. When she opened them, something had shifted. The room felt smaller, the space between us unbearably thin. And then, the door creaked open. We both froze. The door creaked, and we both flinched like we'd been caught in something we hadn't even done. A voice called from the hall, just someone looking for their coat, and then the sound faded, leaving us in the hush of the room again. She exhaled first, her hand smoothing across her skirt, as though the simple gesture could erase what had just passed between us. I should have laughed it off, said something easy to break the tension. But I couldn't. My chest still ached from the closeness of her, from the words she'd whispered that sounded half like a warning and half like a confession. "I shouldn't be here," she murmured. "Neither should I," I said, before I could stop myself. Her eyes darted to mine, sharp, almost defensive, but then softened. There was a sadness there I hadn't seen before, the kind that doesn't come from one moment, but from years of carrying too much. I'd heard pieces of her story before, in fragments. A long marriage that had ended quietly, like a flame burning itself out in an empty room. A daughter grown, out of the house, living her own life now. She didn't talk about herself much, but when she did, it came out in slanted lines, like poetry scribbled in the margins. I wanted to ask her why she looked at me the way she did, why her voice trembled only when it was just us. But instead I said, "You don't look like someone who doesn't belong." That pulled a laugh out of her, soft and disbelieving. "You don't know what people would say." "Maybe I don't care. Maybe I do." Her hand rested on the arm of the chair, so close to my shoulder that I felt the faint warmth of it. She didn't move it, and neither did I. I couldn't look at her without wanting more, the brush of her fingertips, the tilt of her chin when she was trying not to smile. "You're young," she said again, softer this time, almost like an apology. And you're... I hesitated, choosing carefully. You're the only person in this room I want to talk to. She looked down, shaking her head, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, just slightly, and her breath touched my cheek when she spoke. You don't know how complicated this is. My pulse jumped. I wanted to reach for her, to prove I wasn't afraid of complicated. But I stayed still, memorizing every detail. The faint shimmer of lipstick worn too long, the quiet tremor in her voice, the way her hand shifted just enough to graze my shoulder. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even bold. But it was enough to undo me. We sat like that, too close, not touching and yet more aware of each other than if we had been. The world outside could have gone silent or exploded, and I wouldn't have noticed. Her fingers lingered on my shoulder for one breath longer. Then necessary. Then another. And though she pulled back before it became something more, the electricity in the air didn't fade. If anything, it bound us tighter. The room had gone too quiet. It was the kind of quiet that made every sound, the shift of fabric, the brush of a hand, echo louder than it should. She sat angled toward me, her hand still hovering as though it might return to my shoulder. I thought about leaning in, closing the distance. But then her phone buzzed on the table, sharp and sudden. She snatched it up quickly, almost guilty, the glow of the screen lighting her face. A message. She frowned, her thumb hovering, not answering. I tried not to watch too closely, but the crease between her brows lingered even after she turned the phone face down. Everything okay? I asked. Just, it's nothing. She shook her head, but her voice was too tight, her smile too forced. I didn't press. Instead, I let the silence stretch until she looked back at me. And when she did, it was like the air snapped again, pulling us together whether we wanted it or not. Her knees brushed mine under the table. Neither of us moved. You know someone could walk in, she said. Then why don't you move away? Her breath caught, the smallest sound, but enough. Because I don't want to. Every heartbeat felt like it was in my throat. I leaned forward a little, close enough that I could see the fine lines near her lips, close enough to smell the faint citrus in her perfume. She didn't move back. She should have, but she didn't. Her hand drifted, almost uncertainly, before resting on the table between us. My fingers twitched, wanting to close over hers. I didn't. Not yet. The door rattled, voices in the hallway. We jerked apart like guilty teenagers, her hand sliding back into her lap, her gaze darting to the floor. The door didn't open. The voices faded. We sat there, breathing too fast, both pretending nothing had happened. I can't, she started, then stopped. What? Her lips parted, then pressed shut again. She looked away, her jaw tightening. This is wrong. Then why are we still sitting here? My voice was lower than I meant it to be. She turned back, her eyes catching mine, raw and unguarded. Because I don't know how to walk away. Her words hit me harder than any confession could. She was so close now that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. My hand inched across the table, not touching, just close enough to blur the line between restraint and surrender. Her breathing quickened. She tilted her head ever so slightly, as though she might close the gap between us. My pulse thundered. I could see her lips part, soft and unsure. And then, a knock on the door. We both froze. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved away. In that suspended second, the distance between us had never been smaller. And yet, it was everything. The knock faded, unanswered. Whoever it was moved on. But the air between us didn't recover. It thickened, charged, impossible to ignore. Her hands were clasped too tightly in her lap, knuckles pale. Mine twitched against the table, restless, useless. I couldn't take my eyes off her, the way she avoided looking at me, the way her chest rose too quickly as though she was trying to keep something down. Finally, she whispered, "You can't keep looking at me like that." Like what? Her eyes snapped up to mine, sharp, almost angry, but there was heat in it. Like you want me. The words hit like a strike to the ribs. My throat tightened. Maybe I do. She let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, wasn't quite a sob. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. I leaned forward, my voice low, steady. Explain why you keep staying when you should have walked out the first time. Her breath stuttered. For a moment she didn't move, and then, slowly, she lifted her hand, brushing her hair back from her face. The gesture should have been ordinary. It wasn't. Because as she did, Her fingers trembled, and she let them fall, barely grazing my arm before pulling away. I reached for her before I could think better of it. My hand closed gently over hers, warm and unsteady. She didn't pull back. She was so close now I could see the faint shimmer of her lipstick, worn down at the edges. My thumb brushed her knuckles, slow, careful. Her breathing was uneven, shallow. "Tell me to stop," I whispered. Her lips parted. No words came out. Instead, she leaned forward, not quite touching, but close enough that I felt the heat of her skin. My pulse hammered. I could smell her perfume, faint sandalwood mixed with the warmth of her. My other hand hovered, then finally dared, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek, letting my fingers linger just a fraction too long against her temple. Her eyes fluttered shut. "This is madness," she breathed, leaning into my touch despite her words. "Then let it be madness," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, close to her ear. Her hand turned beneath mine, her fingers sliding against my palm, hesitant but real. She shifted closer, so close I could feel the press of her shoulder against my arm. The room was too small now, too hot, too loud with the sound of our silence. We hovered there, mouths a breath apart, bodies leaning into gravity neither of us could fight. Her eyes opened, locking on mine. There was fear there, and longing, and something so raw it made my chest ache. "I can't undo this," she whispered. And then, she leaned in. The door handle rattled again. The handle rattled. She jerked back, her hand slipping from mine as if the contact had burned her. I could still feel her warmth in my palm, a ghost of something I wasn't ready to let go of. The door didn't open, not fully. Just a crack, and then a voice. "I thought I heard you in here." Her body went rigid. I followed her gaze, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. A woman stepped halfway into the room. Her friend, I realized. One she'd spoken about before. They locked eyes, an entire conversation passing between them in silence. The friend's glance flicked toward me, sharp and knowing, before returning to her. "You didn't answer my text," the friend said. "I was busy." She replied too quickly, her voice thin, her hands twisting together in her lap. The friend's gaze lingered a moment too long before she nodded, forcing a smile. "Well, don't stay too late." She pulled the door shut, but the weight of her suspicion remained, pressing down like a stone. We sat frozen, the echo of it still in the room. Her shoulders slumped, a quiet, bitter laugh slipping out. "This is what I was afraid of." "She didn't see anything," I said. "She saw enough." She pressed her fingers to her forehead, closing her eyes. God, what am I doing? I wanted to reach for her again, to steady her, but she stood too quickly, brushing past me. Her shoulder grazed mine, and I felt the tremor in her body. She paced, arms crossed tight over her chest. "You think this is just about us? People will talk. They always do. Let them." She stopped, turning sharply. "You don't know what it's like to be judged for every choice you make. To have your mistakes whispered about in rooms you're not in. I've lived that. I can't." Her voice broke, the last word trailing into silence. I stood, moving closer, though I kept just enough distance to let her choose. "Then tell me to leave. Tell me you don't feel this." Her lips parted, but no sound came. She pressed her hands to her sides as though holding herself together. When I stepped nearer, she didn't move away. "I can't," she whispered finally. The words cracked something open inside me. My hand lifted, hovering, before settling gently on her arm. She shivered under my touch, eyes closing, head tilting slightly toward me. The fear was still there, raw and sharp. But beneath it was something else, the pull that neither of us could deny. She opened her eyes, meeting mine with a desperation that was both confession and surrender. "If we do this, it won't just be a mistake. It will change everything." I stepped closer, close enough to feel her breath against my neck, my voice low, steady. "Then let it." Her words hung between us, fragile and heavy. "It will change everything." I should have answered quickly, given her space, stepped back. But my body betrayed me. Or maybe it was my heart, and I moved closer instead. Just inches separated us now. Her back brushed the wall as though she'd stepped away without realizing it, but she didn't push further. Her hands hovered at her sides, trembling slightly. I wanted to take them, steady them. Instead, I let my voice fall into a whisper. "Maybe that's what we need." Her eyes searched mine, frantic, as if hoping I'd laugh, break the spell, give her an escape. But I didn't. I couldn't. The silence swallowed us, thick and unbearable. I reached up slowly, almost painfully slow, and brushed another strand of hair from her face. This time my hand lingered against her cheek. She leaned into it, just barely, like it was a weakness she couldn't stop. I shouldn't, she murmured, eyes closing, breath brushing against my thumb. Then stop me. My voice cracked, the words raw. Tell me to go, and I will. Her chest rose sharply. She opened her eyes, meeting mine with something fierce, something desperate. But no words came. Instead, she lifted her hand, covering mine where it rested on her cheek. The heat of her palm burned into me. She stepped forward, so close now I could feel every uneven breath, the faintest tremor in her body against mine. I bent toward her, our foreheads brushing, my lips a whisper from hers. I can't walk away from this, I breathed. Her fingers curled into my shirt, pulling me closer without meaning to. Her voice shook. Then don't. And that was it. The space between us broke. Her mouth found mine, tentative at first, trembling, as if she might regret it in the very next breath. But when I answered, pressing back, the hesitation melted. Years of guardedness, of silence, of unspoken want seemed to pour out of her all at once. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, uneven, too much and not enough. She pulled back once, gasping, as if to steady herself, but then her hand slid to the back of my neck, drawing me in again. Every thought I'd had about right and wrong blurred until all that was left was the truth of her against me, her lips, her warmth, her surrender. When we finally broke apart, her forehead rested against mine, both of us breathless. She closed her eyes, her voice low, shaken. I tried so hard not to want this. I smiled faintly, though my chest ached with the weight of it all. And now, her hand slid down, fingers tightening around mine. She opened her eyes, gaze steady, unflinching. Now there's no going back. And in that moment, I knew she was right. We understood each other in a way that couldn't be undone. The kiss had unraveled us, left the air trembling with something that couldn't be taken back. She leaned into me, her breath shaky, her forehead resting against mine like she needed the contact to keep steady. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with the truth we'd tried to deny. Finally, she whispered, "We shouldn't have done that." But she didn't move away. Her hands were still clutching mine, her body still close enough that I felt the warmth of her. I gave a faint, uneven laugh. Maybe not. But we did. Her eyes lifted to mine, and I caught it then, not regret, but fear. Fear of what people might say, of how the world would see us. But beneath it, there was something softer, a relief. "I've spent years being careful," she said, her voice breaking. "Guarding myself, telling myself it's too late to feel like this again." I brushed my thumb across the back of her hand, slow, deliberate. "It's not too late." She blinked, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw her drop the last of her defenses. Her shoulders,